My name is Joe Stewart. I teach in the Political Science Department at Clemson University in South Carolina.
I'm Tim Moore from the Center for the Study of the American Constitution at the University of Wisconsin at Madison.
I'm Jack Barlow. I teach at Juniata College in Pennsylvania. I teach politics. I went to high school in Kentucky. So where is Highlands High School?
We're located in northern Kentucky, Campbell County area.
Oh, okay. Okay. I was south of you. I was at Model High in Richmond. So good. Well, it's good to have you here.
Please introduce yourselves and your teacher.
Good morning. I'm Austin Hyder.
Good morning. I'm Jessica Krieger.
Hello, I'm Magnus Sieverding.
Good morning. My name is Connor Zell, and we represent Unit 2 from Highlands High School from the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and our teacher is Miss Megan Boyman-Hennies.
Welcome, welcome. Okay, well, let's turn to question 1 in Unit 2 then. We'll follow through with reading it just as if we were at the Nationals. The state sent delegates to the Philadelphia Convention to join with other states in devising and discussing all such alterations and further provisions as may be necessary to render the federal Constitution adequate to the exigencies of the Union. To what extent, if any, did the delegates follow their instructions? What experiences of state governments under their new constitutions after independence might have influenced the creation of the Constitution? Do the decisions of the U.S. Supreme Court function as a continuing constitutional convention? Why or why not? You may begin.
Marquis de Lafayette, a revolutionary military officer, declared, "Our Articles of Confederation ought to be revised and measures immediately taken to invigorate the Continental Union." The delegates weren't explicitly authorized to create a new form of government. Richard Henry Lee, president of the Continental Congress under the Articles, pronounced, the convention was for the sole purpose of revising the Confederation.
While the Constitution's drafting can be considered extra-legal or not sanctioned by law, its ability to address the needs of the nation was a faithful fulfillment of the same directions. Therefore, this panel argues that the delegates did uphold most of the directions issued by the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Although the delegates met the Union's needs, they failed to follow the instruction to not form factions that detract from revolutionary goals of fair representation and self-government. At the convention, 2 groups arose, large versus small states, and after many arguments, the delegates eventually agreed on the Connecticut Compromise, defining state legislative structures and representation, therefore ratifying a constitution fitting the needs of the people.
However, the directions also prioritized preserving the Republic and ideals of the Declaration of Independence. The delegates recognized this was nearly impossible without a stronger federal government, which couldn't be created under the AOC's requirement of unanimous consent. Ultimately, the ideals were preserved by having the House of Representatives elected by the people, as stated in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 1, reinforcing the notions of popular sovereignty and the social contract emphasized by the Declaration.
Furthermore, the delegates met the Union's needs by addressing the issues faced under the AOC, such as Congress's inability to levy and collect taxes, maintain the military, and issues with trade, which was solved through Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, 12, 16, and 3, respectively.
While issues with the AOC prompted the Constitution's creation, experiences of state governments under their new constitutions after independence influenced parts of the Constitution. For example, many debates at the Constitutional Convention argued for a variety of executive branches based on the state's experiences.
Moreover, scholar Willie Paul Adams stated the governor of Massachusetts, like his New York counterpart, was elected directly by qualified voters, an idea replaced by Article 2, Section 1, establishing an electoral college. It was thought to better promote federalism by requiring candidates to appeal to voters outside large cities and increasing the small state political influence. Some states also gave the House and Senate power to override a governor's veto, which influenced Article 1, Section 7, stating a veto can be overridden by a 2/3 majority in the House and the Senate.
Ultimately, this panel supports the notion that U.S. Supreme Court decisions function as a continuing constitutional convention, which is defined as a representative body meeting to form and adopt a new constitution or to form, consider, and adopt amendments to an existing constitution.
In connection to the definition, the court considers the constitutionality of laws and additions to the Constitution in a process of judicial review, which was established in Marbury v. Madison.
Additionally, Supreme Court proceedings resemble those of the Philadelphia Convention. For example, 4 of the 9 justices must vote to accept a case, which resembles delegates voting to accept an addition to the Constitution, and Supreme Court oral debates mimic the civil discourse rule during the convention.
The laws embedded in our nation began at the Philadelphia Convention, evolved from state government's experiences, and further developed through judicial decisions. In the words of Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, the law embodies the story of a nation's development through many centuries. Thank you. We are now ready for your questions.
Thank you. Present a number of interesting ideas here. I want to talk a little bit more about the Supreme Court and the function it serves. As I understood you, you talked about it being a representative body, and you drew an interesting comparison to the Constitutional Convention. How representative is the court really?
Well, while the people do not directly vote for or nominate the candidates for the Supreme Court, it is the people that they put into office, into the executive, the president, that nominates them, the Senate, which will swear them in. So while it's not a direct relationship, it is an indirect relationship, but through the means that the people were given at the Constitutional Convention.
So to pick a purely hypothetical example, if you have a senator from Kentucky who blocks a presidential nomination to the Supreme Court.
Just hypothetically.
Hypothetically, purely hypothetically, that would be furtherance of what the founders had in mind?
And yes, because they were, in the case that you may or may not be talking about, a senator from Kentucky, yeah, they directly voted for that person. And so they believe that that person wants to influence and make sure that their ideals with that person reflect those that it will be going into the Supreme Court, and their political views are influenced into the Supreme Court as well.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask a question about the Anti-Federalists. They looked backwards. They had a lot of criticisms about the Constitution, but they also had some criticisms about the convention. Which of those Anti-Federalist arguments about the convention itself do you think is most resonates with you?
Well, the state of Rhode Island, just in general, was almost a sort of anti-federalist because they were the only state not to be represented at the Constitutional Convention. So, because they felt that the Articles of Confederation were fit the needs of their specific state, and so they thought that they didn't need to be revised. And so, to go off of that, they just didn't think that it needed to happen, whereas the other states saw the issues that were at hand and said that they needed to happen.
While looking back at the convention, where we recognize the secrecy rule as being a prominent and necessary in certain cases rule to be put in place, I could see and understand why the people of the states that weren't at the Constitutional Convention could see that as certain elites in the government taking power into their own hands.
So let me follow up on that a little bit. So, you know, in Federalist 40, Madison answers some of the anti-federalist arguments, but I want to put the anti-federalist case to you. In a popular government, they would say, it's really important that the representatives do as they're instructed to do. And if they don't, right, then the danger is tyrannical government. So how would you respond to that criticism of the Constitutional Convention, that they didn't follow their instructions? They did not follow the letter of their instructions, but that's what they were supposed to have done.
While they may have not technically followed directions, it was necessary because the Articles of Confederation caused so many problems, because as there was not much power, like Congress could not do much, even though that was the only branch of government, and nothing was getting done in the government. So that they needed more power, even though that the Anti-Federalists were not happy with that.
Furthermore, the Articles of Confederation was proven to be faulty and lacking in many ways. So as we mentioned before, unanimous consent kept any delegates from bettering it. So they had to create a new constitution. It was the only way to get to a government that would fit the needs of the people. The articles just couldn't be amended enough.
But the people weren't asking for it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
A notable instance where the people were in support of or recognized the flaws of the Articles of Confederation would be Shays' Rebellion. So the people that did buy bonds and the people that invested in the war, the Revolutionary War, they did recognize that with the government they had in place at the time, there was no way that they were going to get their land back, get the money back that they invested. And so by changing certain things in our new constitution, such as giving Congress the ability to collect taxes, they...
Go ahead and finish that sentence.
They followed through and they respected what the people wanted originally from out of this constitution.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.